Ravens trade for Diontae Johnson, the crown jewel of apparently this like wide receiver availability class, for almost nothing. A 5th, 6th pick swap.
Yeah.
And Carolina is eating a lot of his salary too to do it. So basically, they wanted him out of town.
Next to nothing for that guy.
Happy there in Carolina with how their season went. But for the Baltimore Ravens, people like I think I even on the show said they don't even use 3 wide receivers. Like people are saying, get them another weapon. It's like they don't really even need it at this point. But this is kind of just insurance for when you do have to go 3 wide, when it is maybe a 3rd and long. Now you've got maybe the 3 best separators in the NFL, or the best separating trio of wide receivers in the NFL.
You look around the league, and the issue with a lot of these offenses right now is the health of some of their star players. We got 2 guys down in Tampa Bay. New Orleans fell off an absolute cliff when they lost one of their receivers and their O-line situation. Texans, Kansas City will sell their soul for some more receivers, and they went and got DeAndre Hopkins. You saw the effect that it had on that Rams offense, albeit Diontae Johnson isn't Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. This is a big thing, and even if he doesn't go in there and play immediately and have a huge impact on that offense, it's the availability, the dependability of knowing that you've got another guy with shorter area quickness that can burst and be in Lamar's repertoire.
The interesting thing about this one is I thought Bateman was starting to come on. Now, he did have a few drops this last week. And Nelson Aguilar, to me, has come on as well. So to your point, Mike, this one was a little bit of a head scratcher. I think it's to what Kyle was saying. It's more about depth, right? Just because they know it's a long season, most likely somebody will get banged up. I mean, Diontae Johnson's been banged up this year. You talked about him being able to separate. He's also had issues with drops as well. So when you look at this Ravens offense, Isaiah Likely is starting to come on strong. They really feature 12 personnel a lot when you talk about 1 back, 2 tight ends. So to me, this is just like we want to make sure we have depth, just in case we have a Houston Texans situation, just in case we have a Tampa Bay Bucks situation. Now, the question is Diontae Johnson going to be cool with that, right? Because right now, I don't see him coming in and starting over any other of those guys. Like Bateman, like I said, has played well, Nelson Aguilar. And to Mike's point, they feature 12 personnel a lot. So it's not like they're in 11 a lot. Yeah. Even on 3rd down, like they like their matchup with Isaiah Likely on the field. So it'll be interesting, John Harbaugh, they have a great culture there, right? Diontae Johnson's coming into their culture. I'm sure there'll be some conversations had like, hey, we got you out of Carolina. Right now we're going to ease you into the offense. We've got some guys that we have a lot of faith in, but we need you to be ready if your name's called upon.
You can answer to this as a defensive lineman. As an offensive lineman, obviously the only time that we left the field is for injury, right? Or like if we performed so poorly that they had to try somebody else out. So for D linemen, and I talk to my older brother Chris about this all the time. Chris was an every down guy in St. Louis for years and years and years. And they didn't win a lot of games in St. Louis, but when he had an opportunity to go somewhere and win, he took the chance. So for a guy like Diontae Johnson, who's been struggling to find his success story in Carolina, an opportunity to go to a place like Baltimore is awesome. And you talk about the personnel they run, 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. So it's a limited opportunities for Diontae Johnson. As a rusher, okay, so now I'm going to make this as a defensive lineman. When you're in a group like that, when you're in a room that is successful, that already has the pieces, and you're going to be a rotational guy, not necessarily have as many opportunities, are you willing to do that if you know you have a chance to win this whole thing?
I think it just depends on where you're at in your career. And we've had this discussion before, Kyle. Like, say you're in the beginning of your career and you're, quote unquote, a star or right below a star level and you're a prominent starter, then it depends on what your contract looks like, the money looks like. My thing is, if you've played like 7 or 8 seasons and you haven't had a lot of success, like Diontae Johnson, then it makes a lot of sense. Right now, Diontae Johnson is still pretty young. He's not that old. I believe it's like 28 or 29, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a scenario where in Pittsburgh, yes, they would go to the playoffs, but they'd lose in the first round. He wasn't going to have a lot of success in Carolina. I think it makes a lot of sense from his perspective to go there, buy his time, learn the offense. When they need him, be ready to play. Right now, you talked about the defensive line perspective. I think it's just a lot different because defensive linemen usually rotate more unless you're your brother, unless you're Max Crosby. Those guys don't come off the field. But most defensive lines, they rotate probably like 6 or 7 plays. Like guys are rotating in and out. So you're going to get an opportunity. And what that does, it makes you more hungry and competitive too, because you don't know how many plays you're going to get. So you got to take full advantage when you're out there. So Diontae Johnson, I look at this like he has an opportunity to win, which he hasn't been able to do. And not just win and go to the playoffs, like go further in the playoffs, right? And he's with a culture that is synonymous with winning, and they do things the right way. They're a tough-built team. That's why I wonder what the culture fit is going to be like, and does he start feeling the type of way if he doesn't play or make an impact right away?
Is he going to assimilate or is he not?
Correct.
Really, that's the question.
It's not as if he has the best reputation.
But that's why I asked that question.
Yeah. I feel like Baltimore is one of those places where it's like get in or get out.
Yeah, sure. It will be.
I mean, well, Pittsburgh was like that too, and I think that's why they traded him.
Get out.
They said get out, yeah. But I couldn't believe still, even with all that, a 5th, 6th pick swap.
Yeah, it wasn't like they gained a pick. They just swapped a pick.
Because now the Ravens get whatever compensatory pick, should they let him walk this offseason, that he should generate. And it's not a massive wide receiver free agent class. It's like him and T. Higgins.
Correct.
And when that's the case, usually that bumps up the price a little bit. So I think he's going to get you back like at least a 5th from the contract he gets. And now I know that Carolina probably wouldn't have gotten it because they would have been players in free agency, signed more than they let go. So they wouldn't have gotten that compensatory pick. But someone else could have, like someone like the Texans who just lost Stephon Diggs with an ACL, someone like the Chiefs who obviously they went DeAndre Hopkins elsewhere. But I feel like there were other teams around the NFL that he made more sense for that for this price did not seem like was.
And the Ravens didn't want to run that chance.
The
Ravens didn't want that chance, and they could afford it.
Mike brings up a really good point. I don't think there's a better team in the NFL when it comes to gaining compensatory picks than the Ravens. And maybe this is what they
literally have been since the
they're like the best team. Like they will let guys go, right? Because they feel like we can develop guys that'll come in and fit our culture and still play at a high level. I mean, case in point, how many big free agents did they lose last year? Davion Clowney, right? Geno Stone, Patrick Queen. Like they'll let top end starters go because they feel like we draft really well. We'll develop guys,
cultivate
exactly, and they'll fit in our system. So that's a really good point, Mike. They literally could have made this trade because they're like, he's not in our future plans. Yeah. We're gonna let him go. We're gonna gain a 5th or 6th round pick next year.
So it's gonna cost you nothing for insurance. So very smart team building from the Vikings perspective. And then the other thing they do in free agency that is very smart is they let those guys walk, and then when they do sign free agents, usually it's guys who are cut elsewhere.
Yep.
Because then they won't factor into compensatory.
Or sign guys really late, Calvin, after
it all counts. So it's they know what they're doing there in Baltimore. Another team that maybe knows what they're doing a little bit, the Minnesota Vikings traded for Cam Robinson also yesterday. A 5th that could become a 4th, and they give up, I believe, a 7th that could become a nothing based off of some conditions about his playing time there in Minnesota. So with Christian Darrisaw out, we kind of postulated that they could make a move like this. They're still in the hunt. I don't think this pushes them over the edge. I think it's still a massive downgrade from Christian Darrisaw.
It's a necessity, though.
Yeah, it was a necessity.
This is a necessary move
to keep your season on
track.
For
the Minnesota Vikings, who started hot. They've kind of stumbled as of late, but that offense, it's kind of based around the fact that they can have those 2 tackles and protect and allow Sam Darnold that comfortability to sit back there in the pocket and run O'Connell's offense. When you've got somebody not named Darrisaw in there, it's not going to look as good. You go get Cam Robinson, you're able to put a Band-Aid on that wound a little bit and move forward. This tells me that they do think that this is the team that can make a run here.
I will say Pete Prisco was all on this.
Yes.
Right? Christian Darrisaw, to your point, was playing Pro Bowl, maybe all-pro type football this year. Literally, he was toying with guys out there. Major loss for them. To your point, you can't replace him. This is essentially a Band-Aid. Cam Robinson has struggled at times this year, but he's a guy that has a lot of experience, that has played at a high level before. And again, you want to make sure that at left tackle, you have somebody that's at least sustainable. That way Sam Darnold has an opportunity to be able to throw the ball down the field.
I think as an offensive tackle in the league, as an offensive lineman in the league, offenses at their root, it's like a root language. Like we all come from Latin, you know what I'm saying? So there's inside zones, there's powers, there's scat protection, there's jet protection, 7-man, 6-man stuff. You can run nakeds, but it's those details of the Kevin O'Connell offense. I'm interested to see how long it takes Cam Robinson to get up to speed on. How many steps am I taking on this tunnel screen? What's the count on release for this halfback screen? What are our calls? These are the type of things that remain to be seen for Cam Robinson. But if he focuses up, we could see him in the lineup, obviously, as quick as next game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, from the Vikings perspective, I don't think this pushes them over the hump, but I think this keeps them playoff competitive at minimum.
Yes.
But I think they're still firmly behind the able. It's just, you can't replace, again, what you had there in Christian Darrisaw.